government is the most powerful government in the world, which means it's the force with the most potential for danger in the world. And having armed citizenry, I think, is a good thing that restrains the power of the federal government.
So you're dealing force with the force and hoping that force versus force will solve the problem.
That is how government works. Yes.
Yeah, particularly in the United States. I mean, the whole thing is built upon checks and balances. And
Yeah.
the final
First of all, a 22 years old Qatari officer who was guarding that building was killed. He was not involved in any of this process. Whose blood? Who's responsible for his blood? Number one, that's question. Number two, the office that was established there was with the approval of United States, and Israeli governments used to negotiate through that. So I clearly see that Israel is acting as a villain in the Middle East right now. Imagine,
Pakistanis accused of rape, grooming gangs. Like, that is a real thing. That actually happened, and I think people.
And I think that, sorry to interrupt you there, but even if they're not Pakistanis, it's not just about one particular, because they were Pakistani, that's why they were not persecuted, right?
Islam will continue to be triumphant until there have been 12 Khulafa, all of them from Al-Quraysh.
The God of heaven will set up a kingdom that shall never be destroyed. Nor shall the kingdom be left to another people. It shall break in pieces all these kingdoms and bring them to an end, and it shall stand forever.
This is my brother, my executor, and my successor among you, so listen to him and obey.
My kingdom is not of this world. If my kingdom were of this world, my servants would have been fighting.
Whoso obeys me obeys God. Whoever disobeys me disobeys God. Whoever disobeys my commander disobeys me.
The Lord said to me, You are my son. Today I have begotten you. Ask of me, and I will make the nations your heritage, and the ends of the earth your possession.
Two systems of government, two visions for life on earth. Whichever is true changes everything. This is Christ and Khulafa.
Welcome back to Christ and Caliphate. On this podcast, we talk about current events as they relate to the Muslim world from a Christian perspective, and we talk about the foundational issues underpinning both the Christian and Muslim worldviews and how they relate to the present day. Today, we are going to be talking about the tragic assassination of Charlie Kirk. We are going to be talking about Israel's strike on Qatar, and we are going to be talking about England appointing a Muslim woman as Home Secretary. So first, let's talk about the assassination of Charlie Kirk. Let's quickly recap, but what we're going to be focusing on today is how this relates to the conversation around Christianity and Islam, because it does touch that. So, Ibaz, catch us up on exactly what point in time we're at.
So, as many of you know, Charlie Kirk was unalived in front of a very large crowd at Utah State University just a few days ago. Very gruesome, very dramatic. They thought that they had a suspect in custody immediately after the shooting, but it was just somebody who was mentally ill. And then just today, just a few hours ago, they have what they're saying is the shooter in custody. And I was on X and looking, it looks pretty damning. It looks like this is the person.
Yep.
Yeah. So, there was a short time where it looked like, he might make it, or he was at least survived. But from what I, was reading, there was no way that he was going to survive that gunshot. So the shooter, that being said, the shooter from 200 yards out had some level of skill. And what we saw in the video was it didn't hit him in the neck, it hit him in the chest. And the bullet bounced off of his bulletproof vest that was underneath of his t-shirt and went through his jugular. So either way, it was a kill shot, best or not.
Yeah, and he was 22 years old.
31.
No,
the shooter. Yes, yeah.
22 years old.
Shooter. Yeah. With that level of precision and skill.
Yeah, I feel like it's 200 yards away, and as having, some experience with firearms myself, a shot from 200 yards away. People are making it out like it's some sort of crack sniper. That is a hunting shot. So what the shooter did was he positioned himself from a range where he could make the shot, where he could reasonably make the shot. 500 yards, then you start having to talk about wind and adjustments to your scope and everything else like that. Taking into effect like a certain number of grains, gunpowder grains into the bullet to make it go a certain distance in a certain way. But at 200 yards, it's a makeable shot. I mean, I know people who are hunters who can make, a shot on a deer with a scope from 200 yards.
And the kid's dad is in law enforcement, I believe.
Yes, and apparently he confessed to his dad that he did it, and his dad turned him in.
Yeah. So it's not there's no kind of crazy conspiracy here, or even though people would like to make one.
I mean, that's all over that there are conspiracies. I mean, it's actually really interesting because, there was a lot of people blaming the Jews. Like blaming if Charlie Kirk ever turned on Israel or something like that the Mossad would take him out. There was a lot of stuff like that on there, and it wasn't, it was coming from all different sources, like alt-right sources and some Muslim sources, and it's really tragic that people took it there, because when you actually see the evidence, the guy wrote all kinds of stuff on his ammunition, on his bullet casings, that reflects like viewpoints of Antifa.
So what I want to walk through today are some of the Muslim reactions to this. And there's a range of reactions. And I want us to help through how, as Christians, we should be thinking about these reactions. Because I say this because there are Muslim voices who are celebrating and some who are not celebrating. And just like after 9/11, we're in danger of not properly differentiating in our reaction. And we want to make sure, as always, that we are properly differentiating between the different viewpoints in the Muslim world and reacting appropriately to those.
Sure.
So let me kind of read you the first one. So the first one is somebody shared this meme where a Muslim posted "shot on the neck" and then the Quran verse, "and we are closer to them than their jugular vein."
Oh.
I mean,
Brutal.
looking at this, I greatly disagreed with Charlie Kirk on his views, and I openly say that. But that's not the way to handle your differences. Killing a person who was doing, I think, a sort of academia. He was challenging you to come and debate with him, which is common in civilized world, right? So if you disagree with him, go challenge him, learn something, and then confront him. But killing someone, this is horrendous. I strongly disapprove of anything. Just like the people who are mocking his death is just horrendous.
Let me ask you a question about that particular concept in the Quran. Is it in the form of vengeance? Is it in the form of some sort of justice or something like that? Like, what is the context for that?
The context of that isn't even like, to me, I always read that as a threat, but I actually don't think it's meant as a threat. It's just talking about Allah's proximity to humans.
So yeah, okay. The person who posted that obviously views it as like a retribution.
Yeah.
Right. I think it's clear to say that.
Yeah, a lot of people are putting it that way.
Yeah.
Putting it that way. So Charlie Kirk had said it the day before he died, or at least a couple of days before he died. He says that Islam is the sword the left is using to slit the throat of America. And so there's Muslims who are speaking about this as if this is some sort of divine retribution for the things he's spoken against.
Sure.
Islam. And so there's another Muslim on X who says, every time one of the heads of the kufr dies, these snowflake Western cute Muslims pop up to say you can't testify that they're in the fire or you can't speak badly about them. How are you supposed to win wars with these creatures? No wonder the Ummah is in this state. You can't even conquer a hut with these emasculated, domesticated slaves. And it's not just subahat misconceptions due to wrong interpretation. It's clear desire and urge to be soft towards the kuffar and be loved by them.
That's the idea the Muslim world is facing, the extremist radicalist ideas. And I think I would say, may his soul rest in peace, Charlie Kirk, but he was also propagating that extreme ideas towards the right, which I am particularly against. Particularly, I mean, look at this way, James. We are mourning his death. All of the United States is mourning, and of course, it's a great loss. He left a wife and 2 kids. It's sad to see that, but at the same time, it is sad to see that an innocent Palestinian being shot by Israeli sniper who had kids and families too. So, as a human loss, we have to see that thing. I think it's more important for us.
So actually, I would see this is the sort of mainstream Muslim reaction right now is, oh yeah, this is bad, but look at Palestine. And I think this is, it's understandable, but it's the exact wrong moment to talk about this.
I actually think that whataboutism in any argument is not productive because there are so many different factors, right? Like one, regardless of whether or not you agree with the statement, one is a war zone and one is a college campus, right? Like, one exists in a country where free speech is enshrined, and one is a war zone, right? Like, so one, it's just 2 different worlds.
Now, I'm purely talking on the level of emotions. When I mentioned wife and kids,
Yeah.
where we feel that grief of like, oh, look at those innocent kids and a wife that be left behind. I'm seeing from that emotional level. I'm not saying war or not war, peace or not peace.
Right.
As on a human level, that was my
actually, I find that most of the Muslim perspectives that I have seen online actually kind of more line up with what you just said. Like I dislike him. Some people have been as clear as I hated him. But it's bad for, like, he shouldn't have been shot, and I feel bad for his kids.
Yes.
So let's jump into a couple of the what I would call good reactions here, and then one that's a little bit more neutral maybe. So a friend of the show, Dr. Hotha, says it's disheartening to see some Muslims on the TL rejoicing over the killing of Charlie Kirk. Charlie Kirk was a civilian. It is not permitted in Islam to celebrate his death. This sort of edgelord behavior is beneath us.
Exactly.
I would agree with that, right? Like it's the contrast, unfortunately. Yeah. Emotional response.
Death of innocent civilians.
Right.
Pakistan, Afghanistan, America, Argentine,
Right.
wherever it is.
Right.
It should not be celebrated by any party, white,
Sure.
black, blue, brown, whatever.
Right.
And people, and I just want to say something here about Charlie Kirk. People are sort of saying he's celebrating the death of Palestinians. That is not true.
Yeah, I actually did a deep dive on that, and there are a lot of clips talking about like how he viewed the loss of innocent life in Palestine being like a tragic thing, something that should like kind of be a pox on humanity. I'm paraphrasing, but yeah.
So his position was, it's that the loss of Palestinian civilians is awful and tragic, and it's entirely Hamas's fault. Now that's
that's where I disagree.
Right. I also
parse that out.
Right. You can parse that out, right?
Right.
I also disagree with that,
Yeah.
but I would say it's maybe 60-40 Hamas's fault, right? But I
would also, just to piggyback on what you just said, that is not a view that only he holds.
Right.
There are a lot of people who hold that views in the pundit space.
Right.
So,
And
even extreme than that.
actually, I know Muslims who believe that.
Right.
Like I know influential Muslims who believe that.
Right.
So
this is all a debate about details.
Right.
And so he's either right or he's wrong on that angle. But what he's not saying is it's not immoral to believe that, right? It's, he's not saying, civilian casualties are good, right? That would be an immoral thing to believe.
Right.
It's simply a question of who is to blame. And that actually does need to be something we can discuss.
Right.
Right. And so I
honestly openly disagree about.
Yeah.
Right. Like, I think one thing that he was really good at was being positioning himself in a forum where people could openly disagree with him.
So I would guess in this room, you'd probably be about 30% Hamas, 70% Israel fault.
I was a 50-50.
50-50. Okay. So maybe I'm 60-40. Maybe you're 80-20, right?
Just like the ground beef, baby.
Yeah. So
It's a perfect.
Cook that fat off.
So again, one of us it's somewhere in the middle. We don't. I don't know if it's 50-50, if it's 60-40, if it's 80-20. And so somebody may have an unnuanced view about it.
Yeah.
And that does not make them evil.
Right. And I believe everyone has their reasons for believing that. Right?
Yeah.
Like the sources you've read, the sources.
Yes.
I studied political movements and terrorism, right, in college. So I'm not just drawing from, like a religious spectrum. I'm drawing from an academic spectrum, just like you are, right? Like, we're all informed.
And
we have to come to our own conclusions about the information we gather.
And the personal connections can skew these things too, right?
Absolutely.
So if you have a bunch of Israeli friends who are nice people, then it's easy to kind of go onto it's 100% Hamas's fault, right?
Mm-hmm.
If you're only connected to like nice Arab Palestinians, then it's easy to be on it's 100% Israel's fault train, right? And that's and either way, Charlie Kirk did not have power in Israel. He was not somebody who could, decide whether a bomb or not is dropped. He, like the rest of us, is interpreting the data that reaches him and forming his opinions around that.
Right. And it's completely within the limits of legitimacy, in the sense that he was not doing an act of terror by doing so. This is his point of view, and it shall be respected.
Right.
Yeah.
Can I just jump on that for a second? Because a lot of people will look like he did if he did an interview with Netanyahu, right? People would say that he was facilitating a terrorist. You know what I mean? Like that, how dare you have somebody on your show who is essentially from, a Muslim, or just, let's just say, like a certain perspective, facilitating or organizing a genocide. But that argument to me is null and void. I remember growing up, and like Yasser Arafat would be on like all of the news shows.
Mm-hmm.
He would do interviews with Barbara Walters. And there are still to this day, like spokesmen for different groups that are radical that will get in front of a camera and someone will interview them. I mean, that's just the nature of the press, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's just the nature of the thing. So, yeah.
So then another good response here is Sneeko wrote, so many pro-Palestine people are saying that I shouldn't pray for him because you disagree with him. What's wrong with you? You think God wants you to celebrate his death? You think God doesn't want you to pray for his soul? This is a father. The country is going to go in a more chaotic route because of his death. This is a stain on the legacy of this country.
Yeah.
Which also bring us to, I think it's a side topic, but I just quickly want to brush down on it, is that the gun violence in this country and owning guns and so on and so forth. And I somehow, through my academic years, read about how there are lobbies who control those political movements that promote those guns and so on and so forth. So do you think that if we had in the United States proper gun laws, that would have been avoided?
I mean, I think something like this could have been avoided, but I think there are worse things that would not have been avoided. The Second Amendment is primarily there as a break against totalitarianism. The United States government is the most powerful government in the world, which means it's the force with the most potential for danger in the world. And having armed citizenry, I think, is a good thing that restrains the power of the federal government.
So you're dealing force with the force and hoping that force versus force will solve the problem.
That is how
the-
government works. Yes.
Yeah, particularly in the United States. I mean, the whole thing is built upon checks and balances. And
Yeah.
the final check and balance is to protect the right to free speech is the right to bear arms. I mean,
Yes.
that's the reason why they put it as 1 and 2.
Yeah. So I think, yeah,
I don't even know what like people want in this situation, because the gun was legally owned. It was not some kind of assault rifle. It was a bolt action hunting rifle, a rifle designed to take down a deer. His
Mhm.
dad was a cop who's more vetted than a cop, right? Like, you know, he obviously had taken all of the firearms classes, right? Like he had obviously well trained with the gun, right? Like obviously knew how to handle guns and ammunition and how to safely discharge it. Like, you know, that, and on top of that, he lives in Utah. Like that's prime time hunting country. You
Mhm.
know, if you're a hunter, this is like the place you go. You go into those mountains and you scope out a deer from 150 yards and you take it down, and it's your prize, right? Like, so
It's a
how
trophy.
do you change any of what happened with that kid, like what happened in this situation, that it has to do with the gun? So my thing is, there are like, and then do we start getting into, well, you're a liberal, so you can't have a gun, or you're a conservative, you can't have a gun? Like, this is the problem. And then the call is to just get rid of them all, which is against Second Amendment.
Yeah. So
So-
at this point, you'd need such a fundamental change in the country that you'd need to say, okay, well, we're just not going to do guns anymore, which is just not a practical move to make because people don't trust each other and they don't trust the government.
Okay, what would be the feasible solution to avoid such tragedies, I would call it?
I have one answer. First of all, we are behind the world in mental health in every aspect. Like, a lot of these school shooters are like kids that have been on antidepressants, are undergoing, just to put it kindly, like radical medical changes to their anatomy and all this other stuff. And then on top of that, like, you know, that poor that other woman that was killed on the train. I don't know if you saw that.
Oh yeah, that was tragic.
That was gruesome, right? Like she was just sitting there on her phone, you know, and the guy stuck a pocket knife into her throat. Like,
And she died crying there.
and she
It
died
was-
crying there. Nobody was helping her and everything else like that. Listen,
That was more of a pain for me to see that nobody even moved. Nobody even
I know
cared.
they were just like 1 and 2. It was like, it was such a hard week, right, to watch those things. So
I don't know where the world is going, man, to be honest.
I mean,
King Solomon put it this way: because the sentence against an evil deed is not executed speedily, the heart of the children of man is fully set to do evil.
so
Speedy justice.
I think that's one thing, right? Like a lot of the things that are happening now is that no one has any like fear.
Yep.
Of, you know, they don't have fear of like their parents, much less the government, right? Like people are so from a young age, even like I can mouth off to whoever I want. Why shouldn't things be exactly the way I want it? There's like a spirit of entitlement, you know, like a attitude of entitlement and everything else like that.
So here's the deal: our legal system is sick, and our culture is sick, and those sick people happen to have guns, and that's the consequence of this, right? And I don't believe there's a feasible way to just delete guns from America. It's not going to happen. So what
More
needs
strict laws
you can
on guns.
I mean, that's already been in place. So the problem is that if you go back to the Brady Bill in the 90s, right? Like the weapons were banned, you know, I think in 94, 94 is the Brady Bill. So all ARs and semi-automatic hunting rifles were banned. And then they and it showed absolutely no change right? In the crime, and like if you were to go back and look at the rates to the time when it was unbanned. Sure, maybe you like revisit some of those things, but I think the issue is that with the things we have with technology, right? Like there are trigger locks, you know? There are biometric things where like your gun is locked and it's just boop, just works right on your thumb and your thumb only, you know? Um, that being said, I mean, like, it's not going to stop the cartels from bringing drugs.
No,
It's not going to stop the gangbangers.
and the reality
It's
is
not going to stop any
most
of
gun
that.
deaths in America happen through pistols
Right.
because that's what's concealable, right?
I mean,
Most of the time, if somebody's carrying a big gun, that person can be identified and apprehended.
and then,
You know, the problem is what we can hide.
I mean, this might be kind of shocking too, but if you have trained with a pistol, uh, a high-powered rifle, like an AR, which is actually underpowered rifle, if you want to get technical about it, because once you take the bullet from an AK and a bullet from a 223, you know, like AR, the size scope is crazy, right? They're both designed to do different things. But a pistol in close quarters is unfortunately way more effective. It's easier to brandish. It's easier to hide. If you can change mags, you know, just watch the opening scene of the Dark Knight Rises. Like he's got a Glock with a 30 round mag. Like those things exist. It's got just as high capacity in a small space, right?
Mhm.
So, yeah.
So to wrap up this segment here, there are going to be a lot of people who see Islam as a threat, as a monolith, and our call always in this show is to be able to differentiate. There are some Muslims who are a threat to peace and order and civil society. Those people exist. Those people have dangerous views. But there are lots of Muslims who are not a threat to civil order and society, who are upstanding citizens. And we have to be able to tell the difference between who is who and not paint everyone with a broad brush. As conservative Christians in America, this is an important watershed moment. We actually have an opportunity to make serious progress in a culture war. Everyone sees the crazies right now. Everyone understands that there are crazy people out there who hold these sort of radical left-wing ideas, and that those people are making alliances with people who hold onto crazy jihadi, radical Muslim ideologies. And we need to have a focused, principled stand against those things without sweeping up everyone else who we might want to connect to those people. If we can focus on the actual issues and then show reasonability, kindness, compassion, hospitality to people we disagree with who are otherwise normal people, then we can make some serious progress and we can make this country a better place. So we can't just react. We have to have a disciplined, reasoned response to this. And by doing that, we can win. So now we're going to talk about what happened in this last week with Israel taking out Hamas operatives in Qatar. What are your immediate reactions to that?
I have opinions on it, and very strong ones. You know, first of all, a 22 years old Qatari officer who was guarding that building was killed. He was not involved in any of this process. Who's responsible for his blood? Number one, that's question. Number two, the office that was established there was with the approval of United States, and Israeli governments used to negotiate through that. So I clearly see that Israel is acting as a villain in the Middle East right now. Imagine this. Pakistan has declared BLA, Balochistan Liberation Army, as a terrorist organization. Not just Pakistan, but it's internationally recognized as a terrorist state. The leaders of that state lives in United Kingdom. So if Pakistan tomorrow conducts an attack on United Kingdom, would that be acceptable for you?
No.
There you go. That's my opening statement.
So for me, it's like honestly, my honest reaction is whenever something like this kind of like high profile precision strike happens, my immediate reaction is, cool. But
Ethan Hunt with drones.
like you know, anyone who's in leadership in Hamas, I'm fine with them dying, right? I don't have a problem with that. But here's what I do have a problem with. I think this is a really reckless move by Israel. And the reason I think it's a reckless move is because the Gulf is generally moving in the direction of being pro-West and pro-Israel. And so the Gulf countries are closely connected to each other. And so, you know, again, there's plenty of problems with Qatar and the where their money goes and all of that. But the same was true with Saudi Arabia, 30 years ago as well, right? There's all sorts of unscrupulous things Saudi money did, but now I would argue that Saudi Arabia is generally a force for good in the world and a valuable ally and could be the biggest key to making actual peace in the region. And so what we want to see Qatar become is something that is like the UAE or Saudi Arabia, something that is working towards, you know, peace in the world. And I think assassinating Hamas leaders in Qatar is a, you know, is a reckless move. And, you know, we will see if it pays off or not. Israel has a habit of making these bold moves that are trying to make decisive things happen. And I respect that to some extent. I just think this one is really reckless. And, you know, we'll see in retrospect whether the reckless move, you know, pays off. Like, again, if you go to a casino and you gamble and you win, that's still reckless, even if you end up winning from it. So that's my general take on it.
Yeah, you're using very soft words for the act of the violence or aggression that has been done on violating the international borders. If it was a terrorist organization doing some terrorism there, then I would say yes, it is still to some percent justified with the approval of that country. Yes, that's justified, but without approval, violating international laws and saying we are doing justification. Who are you to decide what is justified and not justified? Are you the ICC, International Council of whatever, or who are you to decide that? There is a lot in it, but to say the least, I think when you are trying to negotiate a peace deal, when you're trying to get the hostages back or being someone in the mediators, because those people who were representatives were not active war personnels. They were not someone that were fighting in Gaza and coming there to negotiate. Those people are just designed to negotiate terms and deals with the rest of the world. Just like Afghanistan had Taliban's, United States never attacked Afghanistan's Taliban's in Qatar because those were the people for negotiation. Same is the case here. So it is, on one side, you can see as an act of sabotaging any sort of negotiation, right? So in that sense, I think it is not just a wicked way or the way you mentioned as, what did you say?
Reckless.
Reckless. I think it is further degree up than just reckless. It is horrendous.
Hi, boss.
I have a different take than both of you. I don't think that this was unplanned or unsanctioned. I really don't. I think that, yeah, I've said this on the show a couple of times. When Trump went to Saudi, a lot of things changed. When Trump went to Saudi, things changed politically in America, right? Like, you know, all of the Elon stuff was gone. You know, a focus and a partnership towards the Middle East happened. And I think that just a couple of days before all of that strike, like I think it was 48 hours. You know, Trump tweeted like, "This is your last. Like we have come to the table. We have negotiated. You know, and you guys." He's talking about Hamas essentially, and I'm paraphrasing. Like I don't have the tweet in front of me, but essentially the tweet was, "This is your last chance," and I think that I'm gonna say that the public face is a lot like what happened with Iran. You know, like, oh, there's a finger pointing, but then behind there's agreement, and then there's a strike, right? Like, and what does that say about America? What does it say about Israel? What does it say about Qatar or whatever? You know what I mean? I think that nobody really wants Hamas around anymore. I don't think that Israel wants them around. I really don't. I think that Qatar is trying to move forward, and I think that the Gulf is trying to move forward, and that the idea of what Hamas represents is an obstacle to that moving forward. And I think that in that little cabal that happened in Saudi Arabia with Trump and MBS and a bunch of other leaders from that area, there was a maybe not like a dictated scripted plan about, well, you're going to do a strike here at this place, or you're going to do this, or you're going to do that. I think that there is like a lot of um, they are the problem. We all agree that they're the problem. We all agree that what they did is not something we want to see something repeated, no matter how we feel about Israel, right? Particularly in that fashion. So therefore, we all agree that they have to go. And most of the Palestinians I've talked to agree that Hamas is like not the answer.
So
that's just here in the States, though.
okay. So basically, what you're suggesting here is that what it looks like to the public is Israel just acting unilaterally. But what you're suggesting,
I mean, maybe they did.
Yeah.
My point is that the leash is much longer than it has been in the past.
but there's kind of like what you may be saying here is there's a tacit understanding in the Gulf countries of like, all right, this needs to happen.
Listen, the countries that Israel has struck, somebody posted it on X, and they were obviously against what happened, and I don't want to see anyone die. Hamas leaders, Qatar leaders. I'm just tired of people dying. But that being said, somebody posted a list of all of the countries that Israel struck, and then it dawned on me like that is a list of countries that have not eliminated Islamic extremism, or they court it, right? Or they facilitate it, or they do this, or they do that in some way, shape, or form, and it's not America this round running around bombing and airstriking these countries, which is what would have happened before, right? Like we would have been the ones launching the rockets at the Houthis. We would have been the ones, launching the rockets at, IS, strongholds in different places, Tunisia and all this other stuff. So, like, we would have been the ones doing it. And I think in America saying we're not going to actively like take our troops and our boats and our rockets and we're going to do it. We're just going to pull that back and let things in the Middle East play out is a green light. And I think that there's also like a tacit understanding.
So here's what I would say, right? So let's say hypothetically there's a tacit understanding between leaders of the Gulf countries of Israel and America, which again we can't prove that. That sounds plausible to me, right?
Yes, again, it's
a theory.
It's a theory, right?
Right.
So I think if that is the case, and okay, what I will say is the case is that Gulf governments understand that the Islamic extremist movements and the sort of resistance mindset is an obstacle to peace. But they can't come out and say that super clearly because it will create sort of popular uproar in the Muslim world. And so the world will get better if we can all say what we think out loud and not be too worried about the repercussions of what that is. So if let's paint the scenario here where the top level of Hamas negotiators are living a luxurious life in Qatar and profiting from the global support of the resistance movement while themselves not actually having to deal with the on-the-ground reality, right? Which is, I think, is true. Let's say certain people realize that in order to make any real progress in negotiation, we need people with, more who feel like they have higher stakes, who feel like they could lose their lives in that. And so let's say everyone has this tacit understanding that enables this kind of assassination. Again, I understand that, but it would be much better for people to be able to hash this out publicly and make that argument and reason their way towards replacing them as negotiators than having an airstrike.
Yeah, I mean, one last point that from my side I would make is, what objectives did Israel achieve here? Number one. Number two, the door of negotiation, of getting the hostages back. That was deliberate attempt to close that door, which has been closed now. Those people, as I mentioned earlier, were not active military personnel who were just fighting the war in Gaza and came back over in Qatar and started negotiation. No, they were not. They were there to make a peace deal, to move towards peace, which Israel for sure does not want at this point in time. Of course, Israel has an agenda that they want to eliminate Hamas completely. Every person that is related to Hamas shall be eliminated. That's their view, but it didn't work. It will not work, and it has not worked in the past. Also, I would say this to people who support Israel for every single action that it takes. I would quote Muhammad again and says, before you, the nations have been destroyed for the reason that when a powerful person commits a crime, the whole of his tribe stands beside him without criticizing him.
Mm-hmm.
So it's very important for us to criticize our allies when they have done something wrong. Thank you.
Yeah. So I think, again, I'll retain my point of knowing what I know and knowing what I don't know. Reckless would be the way I would describe this. Even if everything you're saying is true, I think it's reckless.
I don't disagree with
Right.
that. I mean, I like I said, I don't think that there's a scripted plan. I don't think that there's and on the whatever of September, you're going to do a strike at this place at this time when these people are there. I don't think that that's part of a plan. I think that there's yeah.
So I think it's a reckless move, and I think as Christians we should be praying and working towards a world where rational, thoughtful things are done with a long view in mind, not for immediate gratification. And I think these actions will either be looked at as recklessness or perhaps there's some master plan that we're missing here. I would be very skeptical of that, but we'll see how things play out.
Yeah.
In England this last week, there is controversy because a Pakistani Muslim woman has been appointed as Home Secretary. And for those of you unfamiliar with British politics, including myself, because even though I'm British, my entire adult life has been in America, but the Home Secretary is basically the person in charge of British immigration policy and border enforcement. In England recently, there have been lots of arguments about immigration, especially Muslim and Pakistani immigration to the UK. And there is now widespread controversy over appointing a Pakistani Muslim woman over British immigration policy. What do you guys think about this?
I think she's well-deserved appointee, I would say. There is nothing wrong. She's British. She was born in there, right? And she made her way up. It's not that she was cherry-picked or she was walking down the street, hey, come in, and she's very, I would say, conservative in her immigration approach. I saw her comment or her introductory speech, I would say, in her native language, that is from Pakistan, Kashmiri language. She was talking to Pakistan and India's governments that, we will send these people back and you have to accept them. We do not have laws or things to accommodate them. If our law doesn't approve them, then you have to take them back. So I think seeing that is a sort of I won't say gratification, but I see that Pakistani community has been looked down upon in UK, because as I see, most of them are uneducated and do not have the right ethics and moral values. But people who are climbing up the ranks, just like this lady, I think it's a good way to see people contributing in a positive way in impacting the society in a more better way.
I don't really know what the right answer is, to be honest with you. It could be a good thing, could be a bad thing. I think that I tend to watch the responses on social media, and there was a lot of negative response on social media because
Because she's brown, she's from Pakistan.
no,
That's the
no, I
response.
mean it was more like you're letting the foxes, putting the foxes in charge of the hen house, right? Like, I think it's also important to understand that, like, the controversy that this is based around is not something that just happened. Like, the UK had a very open and welcoming immigration policy, for probably more generous than a lot of other European nations, for a very long time. It still does. And the internal political machine, right? Like Keir Starmer, for instance, not for a very long time prosecuting Pakistanis accused of rape grooming gangs. Like, that is a real thing. That actually happened, and I think people
And I think that, sorry to interrupt you there, but even if they're not Pakistanis, it's not just about one
Sure.
particular, because they were Pakistani, that's why they were not persecuted, right?
Right. This is my point is that, and maybe this is important to say, that I don't think that this is necessarily just against Pakistanis. I think that they are afraid of what Islam is doing to their country. I think that they're afraid.
Baby, we're recording.
You got to make your point again.
I think that it's important to say that the people who are British and not just white Britons, right? Like, I've seen this also coming from Muslims and other. They're not happy with the way that crime is being prosecuted, right? They're not happy with the way that the government is handling immigration, right? So let's look at that and parallel the United States. Okay, we had the same thing. We have a stronger mechanism for changing government than they do, in the sense that one party wins and then they just kind of take over the entire apparatus, right? Or as opposed to a parliamentary system where you have to build a coalition and everything else like that. This is a little different, and I think that what happens in these situations, particularly from the left, is that, well, you're just you're anti-Islamic, you're Islamophobic,
Yeah, so
you're
here,
this or you're that. But the real issues, the real time issues of the problems with immigration and the problems with not going after criminals, right, is and then on top of that, you have certain voices in the UK going, we're going to take this country over, which is not helpful, right? Like, those voices are out there. I've seen them on Twitter. Um, you know, is a thing that it seems like the government does not want to touch, and the government cannot pivot towards a place of, like, let's just say, governing health, right? So just to sum up, right? Like, I don't think it's as much that she's Pakistani. I think that there are big problems in the UK government that are not being dealt with, that have to do with a bad immigration policy, like economic policy, right? Like, where are we going to get our workers from? And then on top of that, how that affects crime and the average British citizen. So, her aside, like, people are looking at it and they're going, well, does this look like it's more of the same line of thought that led us to this problem, right? Like, are you just appointing somebody who's going to be soft to your policies that brought us here? That's what I'm seeing, right?
So I think it's 100% because she's Pakistani, and let me explain why. So in England, there has been large waves of like mass immigration, followed up by a political elite class which preach political correctness, which means that if you criticize somebody's culture, you're sort of backwards. You're racist, right? So that means that if any white British person has any criticism of the culture of British Pakistanis at all, you're racist. And the Pakistani prosecutor who oversaw some of the grooming gang inquiries specifically said that one of the reasons this was not dealt with properly is because you have white British prosecutors
I would agree with that.
afraid
Yep.
to appear racist, therefore didn't dig diligently enough
Yep.
into these foreign-born or some sort of native-born Pakistani grooming gangs, right?
That's actually really accurate. I remember reading up, and the prosecutor was like, "I wanted to go after
Again,
them."
and a
They-
Pakistani guy is
Yep.
saying this, right? And so immigration in general is a hot button topic in England right now, and the Pakistani community, for better or worse, is front and center of that. And people are concerned, and people are diagnosing a real problem in British society, but then again painting all British Pakistanis with the same brush. Unfortunately,
That's the problem.
right. So then when people are when that's the kind of popular mood, when there's suspicion of the Pakistani community in general, to then appoint somebody from that community to a lot of British people feels like the enemy army is besieging the city, and now we've just appointed somebody from that same country as gatekeeper.
Well, at the
Right.
very least, it feels tone deaf.
Right.
Yeah.
That's what it feels like. However, I have a different take on what I think is actually happening here. I also think she's picked because she's Pakistani, because I think the British government is trying to crack down on immigration. And if you want to crack down on Pakistani immigration to England, who do you appoint? You appoint the best racist.
Yes, I think one aspect of it is the best racist. Yes, we all are, and to some degree. Let's agree to disagree on that. What I would say to this is the dilemma of Islam. I think there are problems with Islam, but it is not that every Muslim living in UK is a threat to UK.
Agreed.
Right.
Absolutely.
And every person that is in UK, or particularly Muslim and particularly Pakistani, is not working to incorporate itself in the greater British culture, right? So the margin is educated versus non-educated. I see it always like this. There are educated people, learned people who want to incorporate in society and give space. For example, many different culture can exist within a society peacefully and harmoniously. There's no problem. If my neighbor is Vietnamese and I live in a Vietnamese culture, I don't mind living in a Vietnamese culture as long as they're respectful of my culture, right? It is when you cross boundaries with each other, you want to enforce your ideas. That's where the problem is. I do not see any problem inherently being someone from Pakistan living in UK, or if they are born in UK, they are equal citizens to any white person that is born there.
Sure.
And they have the equal rights to go in the government and be the part of the government. There's no problem in it.
What would you say then in response to, like, there are a bunch of Muslim mayors, right? Like, there are a lot of Muslims involved in government there, right? Like, there are there's you know, a huge Muslim governmental um, presence.
Yeah, but they're not there by force. They're by the people's choice.
No, by the people's choice. That's what I'm saying. So I would say that like eh, the I don't know if the problem is tolerance, right? Like I think that the problem there's a lot. It seems like there's a lot of tolerance in the UK, and I think that what they're running into is rogue actors, right? Like or uneducated people or people not willing to assimilate or whatever. But I don't think that the problem is necessarily just racism. Like I think it's leftism.
Yeah. So okay. So there's two issues at play here, right? So the
And back to the British government.
Sorry.
there's people who are racist in England who object to her based on
Sure.
her skin color, and there's other people who, if she was an ex-Muslim politician, would have zero problem with her, right? So some people are racist and some people are concerned about ideology. Both those people exist. And the point I'm making is that what I actually think the British government is doing by appointing her is anybody else doing what I think she's about to do is going to be accused of being racist.
Exactly.
And she's going to be the hardest possible person to accuse of being racist
I would agree with that.
in this issue. Like that's what
It might be politically brilliant.
Yeah, it's a smart move. You know, I heard her speech and the way she was talking and the way she's appointed is like Britain is gonna enforce more strict policies over immigration because it's overwhelming for Britain, right? So appointing a Pakistani which cannot be accused of or alleged of racism, so that's a perfect move.
Yeah, that's actually what I think is probably happening.
Right. This is either tone deafness or it's chess, not checkers.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So that's my theory. So I think, but what I want to say is, in England, there are two sides of this problem. There has been a Pakistani community in England, the Mirpuris from near Kashmir, who have been imported into England since the 1960s as a cheap labor force. People who had connections to England because of the activities of the British Empire in the Indian subcontinent. And I think these people were brought to England in a way that's short-sighted. And these people were never really embraced by the British culture, nor did they embrace the British culture. And there are two sides of that problem. Like the side of them not being prepared to embrace the culture of the country they're moving to is a problem. At this point, people who've been born there for generations, there's no way of fixing that. We can't make anybody appreciate the culture they're in by force or coercion. And you can't deport British citizens back to Pakistan, right? That's just not a way forward. But what is the way forward, and the kind of things that we're advocating for the Al-Maida Initiative, is go the extra mile to embrace your Muslim neighbors, to make friends with your Muslim neighbors, to have reasonable conversations with your Muslim neighbors. And again, we keep using this word, differentiate. You need to be able to see the difference between people who are actually malevolent actors and then regular people who are just your neighbors. And what we've seen through these Pakistanis in the UK, yeah, some of them have caused problems, but others have elevated their status. Some of them are now lawyers and people in the government. And you may disagree with some of the positions that they're taking in the government, but Shabanna Mahmoud, I believe is her name, she'd be an ally in the culture wars in some ways, right? She's been advocating for J.K. Rowling with all the sort of trans stuff. It's only through embracing the people in front of you, only through making friends with people, by being neighborly to people, and yes, disagreeing where you disagree and not being afraid to voice your opinion. Delete the political correctness. Say what you really think. but say what you really think while moving closer towards the people right next to you. Thank you for listening to Christ and Caliphate. We will be back next time.